Hi Carrie, it's Madison. I would first just like to say thank you for extending the deadline on the project. I certainly needed it. My topic today is going to be cross cultural attitudes toward body image and fitness ideals. Just a few words before we start. This presentation examines the body as not simply that biological entity, but also as sort of a cultural artifact, if you will, a site where power, identity, discipline, and social values are written. Anthropology teaches us that the body is never a neutral and it's constantly shaped by social structures, historical forces, and cultural meaning systems. By studying body image and fitness cross culturally, I think we are asking a deeper question of who gets to decide what a good and healthy body looks like and why. This topic is not superficial and it reveals how societies discipline, reward, and regulate human bodies in order to maintain that social order. For the introduction, anthropology rejects the idea that body ideals are biological truths. Instead, we understand them as culturally manufactured standards that we learn through our family, media, religion, and institutions. When Lee et al. In 2014 demonstrated differences between Korea and American body dissatisfaction, they were not merely reporting physiological outcomes, they were revealing how different societies organize shame, success, morality, and belonging. The body becomes a cultural project, something we are supposed to work on and demonstrate things like self control as well as social value. Now we're going to be looking at the Western cultural ideals. So I don't hear my photo of Ryan Gosling there. The figure caption did get cut off, but it says photo of muscular Ryan Gosling showing his muscles, in case you were curious. So, in Western societies, especially those shaped by capitalism, the body has become a commodity, something that is to be bought, sold, optimized, and displayed. The fit body operates as a cultural capital. It signals discipline, productivity, moral worth, and even class status. Fitspiration culture does not simply promote health, it actually enforces neoliberal values of self surveillance and self discipline. Ladwig et al. In 2024 show that supposedly empowering content often reproduces exclusionary ideals under the language of wellness. From an anthropological lens, this reflects how capitalism colonizes even the most intimate domains of the bodily experience. Now we're going to be looking at East Asian cultural ideals, mainly focusing on Korea. In many East Asian contexts, beauty standards are tied less to the individual expression and more to social harmony and collectivist responsibility. Conforming to body ideals acts as a form of moral behavior. In Korea, Lee et al. In 2014 demonstrated that social media pressure intensifies surveillance culture. Individuals do not simply monitor themselves, they anticipate being judged by their community. And anthropologically, this reveals how shame operates differently across different cultures. In collectivist societies, bodies carry the burden of family honor, employability, and future social mobility. Now, taking a look at cultural traditions and body ideals. Across history, bodies have been symbolized for far more than just aesthetics. In some cultures, fullness indicated abundance, fertility, and social stability. Thinness in these contexts signaled poverty or illness. These ideals are not arbitrary. They emerge from material conditions such as food scarcity, disease, or labor demands. What we call beauty standards are actually historical survival strategies made symbolic. Anthropology forces us to recognize what modern Western culture calls obesity may have once been a sacred, respected, and desirable in other social cultural systems. A look at the global fitness cultures. Fitness is not a biologically universal behavior, it is a cultural ritual. Different societies structure movement differently due to environment, climate, social class, and colonial histories. Healthy living is actually culturally scripted. In some cultures, physical labor equals fitness. Structured gym culture would be seen as artificial or elitist. This reminds us that global health standards often reflect Western biomedical dominance rather than culturally situated understandings of wellness. For the cultural context of physical activity, Rio and Saligan in 2023 demonstrated that physical activity cannot be separated from structural forces. In anthropology, this is called embodiment, the idea that social inequality literally enters the body as fatigue, illness, or limited mobility. If women are discouraged from public exercise, or lower class neighborhoods lack safe spaces, then body outcomes are not individual failures. They are expressions of structural violence. This reframes fitness away from morality and more toward justice. Next, taking a look at social media across cultures. Anthropologists analyze social media as a form of that modern myth-making. Platforms like Instagram function like ritual spaces where idealized bodies serve as modern icons of virtue. Norton in 2017 and Lee et al. In 2014 show how these images standardize global aspirations. This is digital colonialism of the body, where one aesthetic is kind of exported and normalized worldwide. Social media does not simply reflect culture, it actively manufactures global body hierarchies. Risks and benefit of body image trends. The emergence of body positivity and body neutrality can be understood as a countercultural movement, attempting to resist dominant power structures. But anthropology kind of warns us that resistance is often absorbed by capitalism. Seen by Ladwig et al. In 2024, brands actually monetize this inclusivity, converting what was once political resistance into an aesthetic trend. This demonstrates how power adapts to maintain its dominance. On the side here, we just have a commercialized body positivity campaign as an example of that. For gender and culture regulation, women's bodies have historically functioned as sites of social control. Across cultures, regulating women's weight, skin, and shape has been a way of regulating their sexuality, morality, and obedience. Masculine masculinity ideals, by contrast, are tied to materialism, labor power, and dominance. These are not personal insecurities, they are political projects that are actually written into our flesh. Physiological and social perspectives. Anthropology integrates psychology and sociology through cultural models of self. People do not experience shame, pride, or confidence in isolation. These emotions are socially trained. Lee et al. In 2014 illustrated that body dissatisfaction is not a personal failure, but rather a culturally taught emotional pattern. This reframes mental health away from pathology and towards social responsibility rather. Taking a look at fitspiration through that anthropological theory, fitspiration can be analyzed through Foucault's theory of biopower, the regulation of populations through subtle changes of control of bodies. Fitness culture teaches people to self-monitor, self-discipline, and self-punish in the name of health. Fitzgerald's 1954 social comparison theory becomes anthropologically significant because it shows how power operates horizontally between pairs and not just up and down institutionally. A further look at the research side of things and social comparison theory, the theory kind of states that social media users compare themselves to influencers, which generates that vertical comparison upward of yourself to others. It also does state that there are still those horizontal comparisons between yourself and your peers. There's so much selective editing and idealized materials, again, with this theory based on social media, and this kind of affects your self-perception and behavior. In terms of experimental-wise, the use of data in anthropological work is valuable when interpreted biculturally rather than statistically alone. Numbers can mean little unless they are understood by cultural fingerprints and or lived experience. It's not really about measuring the humans, and it's more about measuring the meaning of these results. So the survey I'm looking at was from Vaterlos et al. In 2014, and here's the findings of the survey. Participants compared behaviors and ritualized social acts shaped by social media rituals. The act of scrolling becomes a cultural practice of self-evaluation. This is symbolic because it means it's created in everyday practices. And these findings are not about insecurity, it's more about cultural training into obedience and invisible standards. Here's an experiment conducted in 2014 where participants are spending an average of 60 to 120 minutes over the course of the experiment looking at fitness influencers, following up to 5 accounts and trying the workouts they see online as well as the dietary plans. The results were seen that social media is mostly a tool used for observation and motivation, and wasn't really a tool that people were using to actively share. Furthermore, what was reported in this experiment was that only 50% of individuals had a positive body image. This was after consuming the fitness inspiration and fitness content. 62.6% of people compared themselves to the media that they were consuming. There were many differences between genders, in this case male and female, when answering these survey questions following up the experiment. Females were definitely more likely to compare themselves to the content they were consuming, and they also had way more negative feelings about themselves after consuming content. Men do not feel as negative after consuming fitness content. Women were also showed to have lower positive body image than men and had a higher rate of comparison to themselves or to the fitness influencers as well as celebrities than the men were seen to have. When looking at the graphs from the study done, you can see that in figure 1, the men have overall positive body image in comparison to the women. And in figure 2, on the right of figure 1, females compare their bodies way more to those seen on social media than the men did. And in figure 3, which is starred because it was talked about in the last slide, but it shows that there is a great deal of women that feel bad about their bodies after consuming fitness-related content online in comparison to the men who do not as often feel these negative feelings. Looking at figure 4, it just shows that both genders are more likely to compare themselves to fitness models rather than regular athletes and celebrities. To look at changing and shifting these ideals, the movement from thin to maybe fit and curvy represents not really progress, but just rebranding of this control. New ideals produce new anxieties, while claiming to offer liberation for people. This is a classic anthropological pattern showing that power rarely disappears, it just evolves. Public health implications. Public health cannot succeed without cultural humility. Western models often impose universal standards of health that erase local ways of knowing. Anthropology argues for cultural relativism, understanding health within cultural meaning systems, and rather than imposing external moral frameworks for them. So, to bring it all together, the connection to anthropology, this project definitely embodies the core of anthropology in a sense that we are seeing the familiar as strange and the strange as logical. The body definitely becomes a text that reveals things like colonial history, capitalism, gender politics, and even global inequality overall. This analysis definitely moved further beyond fitness and actually into the realm of power. To conclude with everything, ultimately, I don't think there's such thing as the neutral body, and that every standard of beauty is a record of these power relations. To study body image cross-culturally is definitely to study society's discipline to human beings while trying to convince them it's things like self-love. Anthropology definitely gives us the tools to look at this and see that it is an illusion and that we should try to see through it. However, I do believe that that is easier said than done, and we will continue in these power relations. Finally, I would like to thank you for watching my pretty long video. Hopefully you did not get sick of my voice, but here is my reference slide as well as a tired man from working out, because that's how I feel after talking for 14 minutes. Anyway, thank you so much.